Arizona recount law could delay certifying 2024 election, officials say. Phoenix, if the 2024 presidential election is close in Arizona, a newly enacted state law will mandate a ballot recount that will probably cause the state to miss crucial deadlines for certifying the vote, according to documents obtained by the Washington Post and interviews with elections officials. Arizona was central to attempts by President Donald Trump and his allies to change the outcome of the 2020 election, and many Republican primary voters in the state continue to be fixated on election denialism, a movement stoked by Trump and others who refuse to accept the results. The battleground state is expected to play a pivotal role in the next presidential election, and any holdup in counting votes there could cause chaos. In a September 11 letter to the County Supervisors Association of Arizona and the Arizona Association of Counties, an organization representing election officials from all of the state's 15 counties wrote that the new law, passed after President Biden's narrow win in Arizona in 2020, will put in jeopardy immovable deadlines on the election calendar, including those that are part of the Electoral College process and those that confirm the winners of August primaries so that general election ballots can be mailed to military and overseas voters. Worst-case scenario, more than half a dozen election officials told the Post, Arizona could delay pivotal steps in the process for sitting a president. The prospect of triggering an electoral crisis has led voting administrators, their lawyers, and organizations that represent them to demand immediate solutions from Arizona Governor Katie Hobbs, Democrat, and leaders in the GOP-controlled legislature. One major proposal would move Arizona's primary election earlier in the summer. Other ideas to buy more time during the general election include speeding up the proofreading of ballots and allowing local officials to more quickly transmit results to the state. The entire United States would have to be waiting on us, said Kent Volkmer, the attorney representing Pinal County, which is southeast of Phoenix and is among the state's most conservative areas. The entirety of the American people will be waiting on the state of Arizona. Sam Alters, the county manager of Mojave County, a conservative area in northern Arizona, said in an interview that the concerns are real and impactful to every county. Not meeting the timelines could have very consequential implications on the state's ability to certify the election results nationally and locally, Alters said. A confluence of factors has set off alarm among elections officials. After Trump's razor-thin loss in 2020 that ushered in attacks on the once obscure management of elections, Republican and Democratic lawmakers proposed a measure intended to strengthen confidence in electoral outcomes. The measure lowered the threshold that triggers automatic recounts in certain races, including statewide and legislative ones. At the time, county officials warned that the proposal would increase the number of contests needing time-intensive recounts. They also said the measure could complicate their abilities to hit mandatory deadlines between primary and general elections. The implications of the bipartisan law have not been tested during a full election cycle because the law did not take effect until the 2022 midterm general election. Previously, recounts in Arizona were infrequent. But the competitive nature of the state, combined with the new law, resulted in at least 3 recounts last November, 1 for a legislative seat in a swing district and 2 for statewide offices, including the contest for Attorney General that was won by just 280 votes. Based on that experience, and projecting higher voter turnout during the presidential cycle, election officials estimate that it will take about 3 weeks to recount ballots during the August primary election. It could take even longer to recount votes after the 2024 general election, officials said, pushing up against the deadline for the issuance of certificates of ascertainment of presidential electors, as well as the meeting of electors to vote for president and vice president. We're unfortunately moving into a perfect storm of timing, said Jennifer Marson, executive director of the Arizona Association of Counties, which lobbies for counties. She said it is unclear what would happen if the state misses 2 pivotal dates that are part of the presidential certification process, namely the December 17, 2024, vote of electors that helps determine an electoral college winner. If we miss that deadline, we are in uncharted territory, Marson said. To my knowledge, that deadline has never been missed by any state, ever. For a mandatory recount, election workers would have to wait for an order from a court and then retally millions of ballots through tabulation machines and audit samples of those ballots. After the primary, this would have to happen while simultaneously preparing to run the general election. Scott Jarrett, Elections Director in Maricopa, the state's largest county, and President of the Election Officials of Arizona, which represents election officials in all 15 counties, wrote in the letter to the two organizations that represent the state's counties that the situation would introduce opportunities for errors and inaccuracies. Election officials face strict and complex timelines set by federal and state laws that affect everything from ensuring the accuracy of candidate names, to printing ballots, to inserting ballots into envelopes, to mailing ballots to military and overseas voters 45 days before the election, or September 21, 2024, according to the letter. Color-coded calendars gaming out the scenario illustrate the problem, with anticipated primary election recount activities overlapping with deadlines ahead of, and well past, the general election. One version of the calendar estimates that counties would begin transmitting results to the Arizona Secretary of State on December 16, 2024, a day before electors are required to meet to cast votes for president and vice president, according to the National Archives' timeline of Electoral College events. That version pegs the results of the state's recounts to become available on December 28, 2024. To prepare for anticipated recounts, officials are looking for ways to build in extra time to conduct the anticipated retallies. They are considering options that would move up the dates of certain duties required under state law and shorten the amount of time to perform them. Options to buy time include moving the date of the August 6 primary election to earlier in the summer, reducing the number of days to proofread ballots, ensuring that courts can work during the weekends to order recounts, and allowing rural officials to transmit election results electronically rather than driving them to the Secretary of State's office in Phoenix. Members of the two associations that represent Arizona counties passed a resolution in September conveying an urgent need for state leaders to act, given the fast-approaching election calendar. The problem, the resolution said, is neither a financial nor personnel problem, but a problem of statutory timelines and deadlines. Election officials met this week with the governor's chief of staff, attorney, and top legislative aides, who created a task force that is also examining election laws and procedures. During the meeting, the aides expressed interest in resolving the issue but did not elaborate on how they would approach the problem, according to the three people familiar with the conversation who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss details about the private meeting. Hobbs's aides told the Post on Wednesday that the governor's team has begun talking to state lawmakers about the issue. Hobbs, who was Secretary of State during the 2020 election, said that she is aware of expected effects of the new recount law and is glad to partner with elections officials for a legislative fix. In 2024, all eyes will be on Arizona, Hobbs said in a statement. We must ensure that Arizonans' votes are counted, including in the presidential election, and that the American people have full confidence in our election processes and our democracy. In recent weeks, Arizona Secretary of State Adrian Fontes, Democrat, and his team have met with local election officials and their representatives to help game out options to fix the problem. Fontes has also been examining the implications of the new recount law and how proposed fixes could affect county operations. As chief elections officer for the state, the secretary's job is to ensure that the proposed solution works for all of Arizona's 15 counties, said Paul Smith-Leonard, a spokesman for the Secretary of State. Arizona Attorney General Chris Mays, Democrat, is aware of the issue and is meeting with county election officials this month to explore possible solutions, a spokesperson said. One elections director from a conservative, rural Arizona county, who spoke on the condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to speak publicly about the looming problem, expressed optimism that a solution would be found. I'm very hopeful that working with our legislators will result in a solution that will allow Arizona election officials the days they need to statutorily conduct automatic recounts, the director said in a written statement. LaFonza Butler sworn in as the third black female senator in history. Butler was tapped by California Governor Gavin Newsom to fill the term of Senator Dianne Feinstein, who died last week. LaFonza Butler was sworn in as the third black female U.S. senator in history Tuesday, bringing greater diversity to the upper chamber after nearly 3 years in which there have been no black women serving in the Senate. Butler, 44, a one-time labor leader who was most recently the head of Emily's List, was tapped by California Governor Gavin Newsom, Democrat, to fill the term of Senator Dianne Feinstein, who died at 90 last week. The last black woman to serve in the Senate was Kamala D. Harris before she became vice president. Harris and Butler have been close since their paths crossed much earlier in their careers in California political circles, and the vice president administered the oath of office to Butler on Tuesday afternoon. Harris congratulated Butler several times after the newly minted senator for California pledged to well and faithfully discharge the duties of her office, and the two shook hands. The senators who were in the chamber applauded and gave Butler a standing ovation. On her way out, Butler walked over to shake hands with Senator Mitch McConnell, the Republican leader. In brief comments to reporters outside the Senate chamber, Harris spoke with reverence about Feinstein's legacy of service and noted that Butler is someone whom she has known and worked with for a long time. "I'm sure she will do an excellent job in filling the seat for the time being," Harris said. Butler told the Washington Post in a statement, "This has been a day I did not expect and will never forget. I'm humbled to have the privilege and responsibility of serving the people of California as their senator." President Biden called Butler to congratulate her, the White House said Tuesday. Butler's swearing-in ends a long and politically difficult chapter for Newsom, who was facing a complex task in appeasing many sectors of the Democratic Party with the choice at a time when he is weighing a future run for the White House. There is already a fierce three-way race underway for Feinstein's seat for a term that will begin in January 2025, when she had planned to retire. Newsom promised in 2021 to appoint a black woman to the seat if Feinstein retired earlier. He made that vow shortly after he appointed Alex Padilla, who was then California's Secretary of State, to replace Harris when she left for the White House. Newsom faced intense pressure from some of the top black leaders in the country to choose Representative Barbara Lee if a vacancy occurred, because of the depth of her experience and the length of her service to California. But he said he did not want to interfere in the ongoing race among Lee and fellow Democratic Representatives Adam B. Schiff and Katie Porter. Lee's allies were furious about the possibility that Newsom would choose someone to serve just an interim appointment without having a chance to run for a full term. Ultimately, Newsom did not set any of those kinds of preconditions in his conversations with potential appointees, according to several people familiar with the process who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss internal deliberations. Newsom emphasized Monday in San Francisco that he had not placed any restrictions on whether Butler could run for a full term. "It's up to her," he said. "She'll make that decision." When asked whether Butler would run for the full Senate term beginning in January 2025, a Butler spokesman said, "This week LaFonza is focused on respecting and honoring Senator Feinstein's legacy and getting ready to serve the people of California in the Senate. Politics can wait." Several people with knowledge of Butler's thinking said she has not made up her mind about whether she would seek a full term. It would be a steep climb this late in the race, particularly because Schiff's team says he will report some $30 million in cash on hand at the end of third quarter for what is likely to be one of the most expensive races in the country next year. His official Federal Election Commission report showing those numbers will not be due to the FEC until October 15. Though Newsom ultimately passed over Lee, his appointment of Butler, who also has many allies in Washington and the Congressional Black Caucus, has been received largely positively by her new colleagues in Congress and by influential liberal lobbying groups. Senate Majority Leader Charles E. Schumer, Democrat, New York, in a speech on the Senate floor Tuesday detailed Butler's background growing up in Magnolia, Mississippi, where he said service was practically a dinner table conversation. Schumer noted that after the death of her father, Butler watched her mother sacrifice everything to put her kids first by working night shifts as a nurse, security guard, and classroom aide. Pointing out that Butler is only the third black woman in American history to serve in the U.S. Senate, he called the moment historic for California and the entire country. "She's the first openly lesbian senator from California, and she's the first openly LGBTQ senator of color to serve in this body," Schumer said. "Today the Senate takes another step towards fully reflecting our vibrant democracy." Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Democrat, California, who is running for re-election in 2024, described Butler in a tweet as a lifelong champion for women and girls and working families and said Butler will be effective from the start in delivering for the people of California. In a statement, the Congressional Black Caucus said Butler's background and experience would bring a much-needed perspective to the Senate, which currently does not have any black women. Labor groups also weighed in with messages of support, including the Service Employees International Union, within which Butler has held several leadership positions in the past decade. The union represents 2 million childcare, healthcare and other workers in the United States. LaFonza Butler has dedicated her life to uniting working people and fighting for economic and racial justice. She is a strong, passionate leader, and she will make an outstanding U.S. Senator, the union's president, Mary Kay Henry, said in a statement. A previous version of this article incorrectly said in one reference that Butler was the third woman in history to serve in the U.S. Senate. She is the third black woman to serve in the U.S. Senate. This article has been corrected. Cornel West to run for president as independent, leaving Green Party. Cornel West, a liberal activist who launched a presidential bid in June, announced Thursday that he will leave the Green Party and run as an independent instead. In a campaign statement, the long-shot candidate and left-wing academic said he was making the switch to ensure true democracy. Democracy means more choices, not backroom deals. It means freedom to vote your conscience without being shamed or bullied, his campaign stated. As Drive West's campaign for president grows, he believes the best way to challenge the entrenched system is by focusing 100% on the people, not on the intricacies of internal party dynamics. This is the second time West has changed his mind about how he will approach his campaign. When he launched his effort, West said he would run for the People's Party nomination, then abandoned that strategy to focus on the Green Party, which already had greater ballot access. As an independent candidate, West will have to do the work to get on the ballot in the District of Columbia and the 17 states where the Green Party now claims to have ballot access for 2024. But it also means he will not have to participate in the internal Green Party nominating process, which West had become concerned would distract from his efforts to take his message to voters. The two parties who have a monopoly on American politics because state legislatures make the rules have created an onerous and what they want to be impossible process, West campaign manager Peter Dow said in an interview Thursday. From our perspective, one of the fundamental focus points of this campaign is to actually embrace true democracy. True democracy is choices. West held a fundraiser this week in Washington, where he made no mention of his impending decision to leave the Green Party. Some in attendance at the fundraiser wore Green Party items, so it is unclear whether his supporters were aware he was considering a switch to running as an independent. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who is mounting a long-shot challenge to President Biden in the 2024 Democratic primary, has suggested that he is considering a pivot to a third-party campaign. Self-help guru Marianne Williamson also is running as a Democrat. Despite some trepidation over Biden's strength as a candidate, Democrats have largely coalesced around his re-election campaign, and many have criticized candidates including Kennedy, Williamson, and West for possibly siphoning votes away from Biden and ultimately allowing the Republican nominee to win. There is no third-party candidate that will win this election. That has never happened in the history of this, and it ain't going to start in 2024, Jamie Harrison, the chair of the Democratic National Committee, said in July. And so, we've got to stay focused on the fight that we have ahead, and at the threat that we see to American democracy, and that's the extremists coming out of the Republican Party. On the Republican side, former President Donald Trump is leading a large field of candidates seeking the GOP presidential nomination. Colby Itkowitz contributed to this report.